Hi everyone, hi. So, today, before we even start, I want you to all look on your tables, okay? You're going to see two things on your tables. One of them, you'll see a small pot of jelly beans. Don't eat the jelly beans, okay? If you have already, you're going to be health-wise okay, but wait until later. But what I do want you to do is all take a card that looks like this. You can see it right in front of you. Okay, now you turn the card over. Excellent, well done. The power I have. So, what I want you to do is, I have a problem, and my problem is I'm talking about scent, and apart from showing pictures of flowers, it's quite hard to sort of visualize this. So, these are scent cards. What I would like you to do is B, okay, I'd like you to scratch B. Scratch it. And I want you to sniff, okay, this is quite hard, this one. I want you to sniff it, and I would like you or someone to shout out which smell they think it is. What does it smell of? Coconut, excellent, coconut. And coconut, what does coconut remind you of? Summer holidays? So, yeah, excellent, excellent. So coconut, a lot of people say that, it is coconut. The next one, okay, this one. Now, A. Smell A. Flower, yeah, close. Yeah, cinnamon. Exactly, it's a sort of spice, it's gingerbread, but that's close, okay? That's close, cinnamon. And cinnamon reminds you of Christmas. Okay, excellent. Now keep these, okay, because we're going to need them later. Now, what we demonstrated here is that, well, that you can discriminate between hundreds of thousands, some people say millions, some people go a bit further and say billions of different smells. And your smell system is so powerful. You know, when you had breakfast today, maybe there was coffee, there was maybe toast, bacon, eggs. You can discriminate all of those, even though those smells are all linked together. It's the most powerful of all of your senses. And even when you are in your mother's womb, smell plays a massive part of your perception of the world. And when you grow up and when you're born, that's how you start to bond with your mother. It's a sense of smell. It's your most powerful smell. And as you develop and you grow up, the smells affect your perception of the world and the memories that you form. So, for example, my children, I have two children, and they were drawing with crayons. And they were drawing with crayons, and I could smell the scent of crayon. And the scent of crayon took me from where I was to my own childhood and my memories and my feelings that I had, just with a smell. And this is because smell, your ability to smell, scent, is hardwired to emotion and memory. As we learned yesterday about the brain and how it's made up, you will see that the olfactory bulb, the part of your brain that processes smell when it comes in, is linked to the amygdala, which is the primary processing area for emotion, and the hippocampus, the primary area for memory. No other sense that you have has this direct link. All other senses have a cortex path. So this is a really unique sense that I'm going to talk about today. And what we like to say, for marketing maybe, is that this makes it a gateway to memory and emotion. You know, you can have a smell, even if you don't know what it is, you can discriminate it and link it to an event and the memories associated. It will take you back. And this means that it has a massive impact on everything that you do. So even if you don't know it, your sense of smell is guiding you. So for example, you know, if you went to a Michelin star restaurant, but it smelt like sewage, would you eat at it? Yesterday, when we had our sensorial lunch, what was the first thing I saw everyone do? They picked something up, they smelt it. Okay, sometimes the smell was misleading, but the sense of smell, it's there. It's obviously evolved to keep us from danger, but also impacts everything that we have. So scent is powerful, we know that. But let's now put it into a context for brands. What does that mean? So first of all, I'd like to talk to you about the retail environment now. This is what a retail store looks like kind of in the UK. Your Italian version's a bit cooler, let's face it. But it's a massive opportunity. But the problem is that for most brands, not all brands, but for most brands, your experience in store is dominated by three senses. Sound, so music mainly, or sales assistants talking. Vision, everything, of course, that you see, the dominant sense. And also touch. Underused even by some brands, which is silly because of a lot of behavior economics in touch, of course. But how about smell? We just talked about how smell is really, really important, really, really strong. So this first case I would like to present you is with some work we did with Ambius. So Ambius are a company that scent stores. So they have machines that they put into stores, and those stores scent, and obviously that they wanted to build a story around why scent is important in order to share with their customers. So the question here was how neuroscience could help them and how they could build a brand case. Now, this is interesting because some of what I've shown you may think this is a bit strange, and there's a good reason for that, and there's two letters, and they're called P and R, public relations. Okay, but this is interesting as well because I'd like you to think about how we've talked up to this point maybe about how neuroscience can be used as a way of informing creativity, evaluating design as part of the research process, but also think about how it can use to build a brand story or brand content around a neuroscience story. This is slightly different. So first of all, we have a little bit of a problem. So when you do any sort of study that looks at scent, and you ask someone, what was this scent like, when you have an experience? People give you such deep levels of introspection, such as, it is nice, and I like it. Now, while that is true, that will not build a good brand story. So we have to turn to our friends of neuroscience. So we used a technique that's been mentioned a few times that I won't go into detail with, which is galvanic skin response. Galvanic skin response, taken as a measure from the fingertips, is a measure of physiological arousal or involvement, as I will call it here. And this is a measure of your pure emotional reaction as driven by your amygdala, as then represented in your peripheral nervous system. And quite simply, we created this study. So we had a virtual reality experience that I'll show you in a second, and we had two conditions. Either people did this with virtual reality and sound, so vision and sound, or they have vision, sound, and scent. And you can see the scent being expertly delivered there by a jar. And the reason for a jar is that you can put the lid back on, because actually if you do a scenting study, you'll find out that the whole room smells like pina colada in about 5 minutes otherwise. So there we go. I'm an expert in that as well. Okay, and what we did was we had 6 virtual reality experiences. Each one lasted for approximately a minute. And they range, as you can see, from the beach all the way to base jumping. And this is why I was saying here we bring PR in, because I could have had a retail store virtuality, but that wouldn't have been as exciting for what comes later. So everyone had this experience either with or without scenting. So let's look at the results. So we're going to look at the results just from the GSR. So the first thing is important for what comes a little bit later. This is the physiological arousal. Okay, so you imagine, for now, that you're on a beach. Okay, you're lying on a nice beach. It's really tranquil. Physiologically, you're right down here. Okay? Now, I throw you out a plane. Now, you're up here. Ah! Okay, you get the idea? So, as the different experiences happen, your level of physiological arousal will change. Now, this is important for what comes next. No scent has been introduced at this point. Now we add scent in. When we looked at the impact of scent, what we found was there was an almost 40% increase in arousal between the two conditions. So the involvement in the experience was 40% more. So if you like and you want to make this a more impactful talk for you, if you maybe sit there smelling this card for the rest of the time, this will be 40% better for you than it would have been if otherwise. You can use it all the time. Okay, but what does that mean? I mean, if we generalize this to a retail environment, what does this mean? Does this mean that if I maybe squirt perfume around my store all the time, immediately involve people 40% more? That's very crude. So now let's look at context, i.e. the different experiences. These are results from the two conditions again, scented and unscented. What you see is the effect is biggest when the base level of arousal was lowest. So this makes sense. Think about it. You're very calm. Your arousal is very low. You add scent in, you get a bigger effect. When I'm already up here and I add scent in, the effect is much smaller. Now think about what that means for a retailer. This is the White Company in the UK. So the White Company, you can kind of get what the kind of store this is, right? It's quite a calm experience. When they add scent into their store, they get an additive effect that brings the overall sort of involvement in that experience up. But if you are Hollister, which is a bit like being thrown out of a plane, apologies if you work for Hollister, you have already got a very aggressive experience. Light, sound, smell, everything smells in Hollister, okay? The change of the different colours, a very aggressive experience. So scent will not work in the same way as it worked in our White Company example. But does that mean that Hollister can't use scent? What we found is actually there is an effect for all conditions if you look at the effect of time. So in this chart here, what you've got, quite simply, is this is all of the conditions. And this is significance over time. Okay? And what you can see is in the first 5 seconds, all conditions are significant. So there's a significant impact of scent on the physiological experience in the first 5 seconds only. But as the sound and visual experience takes over and evolves over time, the two most extreme conditions do not become significant anymore. So now let's take that into what scent can do. That means what scent can do at the most minimal level is be used to drive attention. So this is a store in the UK. I don't know if you have this in Italy. Do you? Yeah? Okay. So you know this is Lush, right? Now, you know Lush is within at least 2 or 3 miles away because you can smell it. When you get towards maybe a mile, your eyes start bleeding. You know Lush is there. And but Lush are they're probably one of the experts in multi-sensory integration, and they are an expert in scenting attention. Because you walk down a high street, you smell Lush from 100 meters away, okay? You know it's there. Now, what did I say about scent at the beginning? You smell it, memories, emotion, together, that drives a much stronger closeness to the brand that will guide behavior, okay? We often say in neuromarketing that our brains don't like to think too much. They've got a lot of work to do keeping us alive, and they could have a little hand with decisions. Therefore, it's helping to, in Roger's words earlier, nudge us towards a particular behavior. And what we did with this is that, just bringing it back around to the original purpose, this was for a PR piece. So we wrote a paper with the client about the effect of scented experience. And if you want that paper, just come and see me. I'll give you a copy of it. It's a PR paper, so it's quite light. And then also what they did is they took this on like a road show. They did Global Shop and international expos, and they took the VR experience with the different scents, and then they got people to experience this, to give them a closeness to their brand. So actually, it's also a very interesting business-to-business example, although I do prefer the human-to-human analogy from yesterday. So moving away from that, though, there's something really important, and I would argue that this is the most important thing for any element of sensory science, and that, or even marketing, that is congruency. So congruency simply means two things that go together. So let me be stereotypical, so English people and tea, for example, or English people and liking to join queues, those sorts of things. They go together, right? Those two things go together. And going back to how our brains work, we don't like to think too much. We like cognitive fluency, things that go together, congruency. So, get the card out. Told you. Hope you haven't put it away. Right, so scent B. Okay, I want you to get scent B, and I want you to start smelling scent B again. That was the coconut smell. Just keep going, okay? Now keep smelling. I'm going to put something on the screen, okay? That coconutty Christmas smell. Love that. Okay, they don't go together, right? Now keep smelling coconut. I wish I could take a picture. Okay, now, okay? These go together, you agree? Excellent. Right, now I want you to flip over to the Christmassy, the spicy smell. The number, A. Go to A. Right, it doesn't work, does it, right? Not unless you maybe have Christmas in Jamaica or something. Okay? Now, okay, so these go together. These are congruent. What does congruency mean? Well, there's a really couple of interesting cases I'd like to just share with you. They're very simple, but they make the point. So in this particular study from Attila, what they did is they took 2 scents and 2 pieces of music. So they had in both times a scent that was high arousal, so something quite aggressive, and then a scent that was quite a low arousal. So this is probably like coconut versus maybe something like a lemony scent, okay? And then they had a music that was either fast tempo, so we'll call that high arousal, or a very smooth, like a classical piece of music. And they paired them together. And they had 2 conditions. One was an incongruent condition where they did not match, and one was a congruent condition where they did match. And what happened is they scented the stores, and they played the music in the stores, and then they looked for a simple post-measure of store evaluation and experience. And what they quite easily found here was that in an incongruent condition, that store evaluation was much more negative, versus a congruent condition, the same store was much more positive. People will not articulate the effect of the scent or the sound, but their behavior will tell you that there is something going on. Let's look at another study. This is a really great study if you want anything about congruency. So this study from Mitchell, 1925, was looking at the effect of congruent scents on behavior and picked out some really key behaviors for us. So first of all, congruency influences customer decision making. Secondly, it gives us access to more congruent attitudes. That means attitudes that you would like more like the customer to map onto your brand. So like yesterday when Eamon was talking about attitudes, maybe measured through implicit testing, how they can be more with one brand than another, here these are the sorts of attitudes that you are then accessing. Thirdly, and almost most important, the autobiographical memories, the memories of self that you are suddenly transferring onto a brand. And then, of course, the memories of the product. All of those things will help with congruency. However, what this means is that congruency between scent, and this goes for any sensory experience, so maybe touch and sound, whatever it is, taste and touch. Congruency leads to more effortless, or to put it in the language we've used over the last few days, system 1 behavior. Because you are giving the brain a path of the least amount of friction, to use Roger's words earlier. So, but how about if it's incongruent? It's bad because it's red. So incongruency leads to a difference in cognitive interference for a start. So that means that we have to start thinking about stuff because the brain has detected that 2 things don't go together, and one thing the brain's very good at doing is spotting when things aren't right. Secondly, and this is one that brands hate, of course, is more decision time. Because what happens when you go, you're in the shops and you're walking along in the shops and you see your favorite biscuits and you reach out and you grab those biscuits and you put them into your trolley. And what happens if you increase decision time is you walk along, you see your favorite biscuits, you stop, you start browsing, and when you start browsing, you start comparing prices and you start comparing weights, you start being system 2 behavior, and that's a big problem. However, I don't want you to take away that incongruency is always bad, because that is not true. Because let's assume that we move to a world where the brands all get on the bandwagon and they all start to understand that congruency of experience and multimodal experiences are the best. How do you stand out? Well, I said that the brain is very good at detecting differences in behavior. So what you do is you start making incongruent experiences. So for example, bad example, but a lemon that smells like a banana. Okay, that is an incongruent experience. If you start to use incongruency cleverly, you start to disrupt. And that's when you do want to disrupt and drive attention and not be fluent, and you do want to stop people in the street, or you do want to stop people in the store. So you can use incongruency to your advantage with scent, but also other things. But how about the effect on behavior? We're always interested in the effect on human behavior, of course. And there's a very interesting case for this. So this is a case for Dunkin' Donuts. Do you know the Dunkin' Donuts brand? Okay, good. All right, so this isn't our case. This was a case that won a Cannes Lion Award. But it's out there, so I can tell you about it. Now, at this time in South Korea, there was a booming coffee market. Okay, so coffee was getting really big in South Korea, and Dunkin' Donuts wanted in on some of that action. But the problem is, how do you cut through when your brand is small and relative to the market, and also there's a lot of players in the market? What they did is they started to look at, can you pair sound and scent to drive behavior? So quite simply, as you're going to see in a second, is they got some air diffusers. They might look very similar to ones that you might see in a bathroom, actually. They loaded them with coffee scent. They programmed them so they would only activate when the Dunkin' Donuts signature tune was played, because in Korea, in South Korea, the radio is played on the bus. And then what they did, as you will see, is that when the bus pulled up at the bus stop, there was a sign for Dunkin' Donuts, 500 meters down on the left. So watch this very short video, you get an idea of how brands start to play around with scent as a prime.
The machine is triggered only by the sound of the Dunkin' Donuts jingle. This jingle was inserted at the top of the Dunkin' Donuts radio ad. When a Dunkin' Donuts ad plays on the radio, a coffee aroma is simultaneously released. Those who noticed the aroma while listening to the ad exhibited some surprised responses. Through positioning, when they exit at their bus stop, they see the Dunkin' Donuts shop in front.
Dunkin' Donuts.
오빠 것도 사왔어.
우와, 근데 어디 커피야? 향이 참 좋다.
바로 요 앞에 있는 던킨.
던킨 커피가 이번에 내리는 당신을 기다립니다.
Okay, crude but effective. 16% increase in visits, 29% increase in sales. Okay, obviously they did that to build a story around, but you can get the idea that scent can be paired with experience, and I would argue can be much less maybe prominent in the experience. Wonder what that bus smelt like after a few trips. But a very interesting case nonetheless. But up to this point, I've really, maybe apart from sound, just really talked about scent as if it's a sort of isolated sense. And we know, of course, that we don't experience the world with one sense alone. Interestingly, if you ask people which sense they would rather lose, so either touch or taste or sound or smell or the other one that I've forgotten, if you ask them, actually, most people say smell. They'd rather lose the sense of smell than any other taste, or at least in the UK. That might tell you something. But actually, smell is so important. It affects our perception of absolutely everything. So, Now I would like to try an experiment with you. On your tables, there are some jelly beans. They're in the middle of that table there. You can just take, you only need one and then you can eat the rest. But please don't put it in your mouth just for now. So I'd like you to all take a jelly bean, okay? Unless you can't eat gelatin or something, then that's also fine. Now, what I'd like you to do, I'll tell you first, just so that we get the idea. I'd like you with your left hand, or right, I don't really mind. Take your left hand, and I'd like you to take it, and I'd like you to pinch your nose, okay? Right, and then I would like you to put the jelly bean in your mouth while still pinching your nose, okay? And I'd like you to start chewing. Okay, just start slowly chewing with your nose held. Now, what you should feel is you should be maybe to feel some sweetness, but not much else. Now, release. Release. Okay? Because before, you were just using taste. And you were able to use one of your 5 primary taste receptors, and you were probably picking up some residual amount of sweetness, maybe a bit of umami or something like that. However, as soon as you let go, all of your smell receptors came in. Straight to the amygdala, hippocampus, maybe some nice memories, maybe some horrible ones are there as well. But that shows how impactful scent is as it overrides the experience, okay? You can now eat the rest of those for the rest of this. That's absolutely fine. So now another little experiment which I'll do with you. If any of you can do this and prove it to me you've done it, I'll give you €100. So, you ready? Yeah. Good. Okay, so I'd like you to all introspectively reach into your minds right now. So I want to make sure you're all doing it. And I would like you to turn off, so you need to block all receptors, associated feelings and memories with smell. So I'm going to show you something on here, and I would like you to only experience this with vision. And I will know, as a neuroscientist, if you are not doing this correctly. You're terrible. Awful. This is, you can't, okay, you can't. Of course you can't. Because this is what we call multisensory activation or cross-modal integration. This is the idea that you do not ever experience one experience through only one sense alone, but with a combination of senses. So here, if I was to put you in an fMRI scanner for that last task, yes, your visual cortex would have lit up, but so would have the areas of your brain associated with taste, with smell, with touch. You're creating a much stronger experience, and all of the evidence goes to suggest such, when you're able to tap into, as a brand, all of those things. And that can be done just through print campaign, through something you see, just through a visual. There's a million ways to show a burger. You don't have to just show it like McDonald's do on their menus. And let's give an example of that. So here, this is an ad for Budweiser. So in this ad for Budweiser, they were doing this sort of thing in the States where it was like these burger competitions, you know, where they have these big grill-offs. So there was this whole thing about burgers and beer. I think I'd argue here they do a better advertising for burgers than they do beer, but anyway. So this is results from EG, okay, and GSR, and I'll play it for you in a second, but just so you know the measures. So here, this is the approach withdrawal that we've talked about so much. Okay, so above the line is approach, and below the line is withdrawal, and then these are peaks in GSR. Okay? Really just watch. Just see where the strongest peaks come to. Did you see what bit absolutely killed that? It was that. Okay. That was the bit in the ad that absolutely drove the brain crazy, especially for men, interestingly. For women, it wasn't quite as strong, but that's another presentation. And it's really interesting because in the ad, actually, they used a whole series of different images of food. And some of them you get absolutely rubbish response to. And those tend to be the ones, and we found this in other studies, that sensorially aren't really activating the other senses. But that burger that you just saw there, you smelt that. I mean, I used some visual cues to try and dial that up, but you smelt that and you tasted that and you kind of felt that, right? It was visceral. And when you use that sort of visceral food advertising, you can induce those smells, and it can be used in other ways. So it can be a really powerful asset for brands. And I think that, unless by accident, many brands don't really try to tap into this, because when I talk about smell being an asset for a brand, I'm not talking about just scenting a product and then that being a sensory experience. I'm talking about how you can evoke the memories and emotions of smell just through a visual asset, because then you are maximizing your engagement. So again, I'd just like to, not yet. So the one thing that smell does, which is really great, and this study came out during 2009, it showed that smell can do something that no other sense can do. When you first have a pairing of a smell and an object, so in normal people's language, that's a smell and like a product, right? That etches on our all-important hippocampus a unique signature on the brain. So you have an absolute opportunity in that first moment when a smell and an object are together to really put something on the brain, a marker, that if you correctly use it later on, can be triggered and tapped into. And this is what all of the other senses are doing. That's what happens when you go into a store and you see something or you feel something. It's just that no one bothers with scent because they think it's not important. So what I'd like to do now is just one more experiment, which is a bit risky because we're not in the UK, but I'm going to give it a go. So what I need is one volunteer from the audience to come up. Otherwise, I'll physically drag someone. So anyone like to volunteer to come up? It's not that bad, I promise. Okay, fair enough. Please come up. Thank you. I'm not sure you want this prize, but stand in the middle of the stage, please. Is that okay?
That.
Okay, so what we're going to do is, in this bag is a product, and I'd like you to close your eyes in a second, and then when you close them, I'd like you to keep them closed, because for the audience here, they'll be able to see what it is, and I would like you to guess the product, and if you can, the brand of product. Okay?
How much do you pay me for this?
You can keep the product.
Right.
It's amazing. Right, okay. All the cash value. So, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's taken me a while because I haven't actually unwrapped it. Okay, so keep your eyes closed. Okay. It's like being a game show host, isn't it?
Very much.
For those of you at home, okay, I know we're in Italy. I said, didn't I? Barbara warned me about this. Right.
Well, I lived in London for a while.
Oh,
so
okay, you'll be fine. Okay.
Ages ago.
Okay, I'm going to put this under your nose. This is a bit weird because obviously you've got your eyes closed. Okay.
Well, come on.
What is it?
Maxwell coffee. Dehydrated thingy. You know, you put it with hot water. With
Instant coffee? Instant coffee.
Instant coffee.
Instant
yes,
coffee.
I forgot the word. Yes.
I say, smell again. Can you get the brand? It's not Maxwell House, I can tell you that.
Maxwell House. No, it's a bit posher.
Ooh.
Can you come again?
Yeah, sure.
Can you just leave it under my nose?
I will. Sorry.
Okay, you have. Okay, it has a G or an N as a starting letter. I can't remember.
That's
the name.
good enough. Open your eyes.
Nescafe.
There you go. Very good. There's your good. Oh,
It's
Nescafe,
mine,
sure.
actually.
You could use that.
Should I
Yeah.
just go?
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you very much. There you go. I'll do that again. Right. There you go. Now, you could trade that for €10, couldn't you? It's from England. Okay. So it's Nescafe, right. Now, look, I know it's Nescafe, I know it's instant coffee, and I know it's Italy. I get that. But Nescafe are, through their history of advertising, are masters of associating sensory experiences with a brand arguably doesn't have actually very good sensory experience. So they know that they have a asset at least. And if you look at all of the Gold Blend adverts, it certainly, and the Cafe Original Blend ads from the early 80s, everyone smelt the coffee. So what I'd like to show you here is an ad, a recent ad to reinforce this point.
I've been peering out a window, trying to find an arrow to fire into the rain. But you were hidden by the shadows, trying to find your way home and shelter from the rain.
Now, I'm a dad, and I've got daughters. I don't really like Nescafe, and I'm like, oh, right? And they're doing something here because they're showing me someone have this sensory experience. They're sort of telling me that you smell this, and they're reinforcing that idea of a smell and a brand. They're showing me some memories that I probably didn't have, but now I'm starting to glue onto the brand. And this idea that you can have a trigger, a brand trigger. But the point is that this sensory association exists with the brand. And when you see Nescafe, your brain can smell Nescafe, right? That's the idea that they're playing with. Obviously, it's easier with food brands than it is if you sell an FMCG brand, but the idea is still there. So this sort of model, if you like, reinforces this point and shows how scent can be really great for reinforcing your brand. So this is your brand. We'll call it Purple Circle for now, if you like. Now, you do all of your activity, right? So you do your above the line, you're below the line, your experiential work. All of that reinforces your brand. That's in your brain. Your brand is those things. Now, you do some work and you associate your brand with a scent. Now, what happens at this point is the scent that you've associated this with has its own memories and emotions that come with it. And then what happens is when you start to use that product, let's say it's a body cream or a shampoo. Every time I use that, I'm forming new memories, new emotions. They work backwards and forwards. It reinforces that sensory experience. And then what happens if I could, let's say, activate that in store, I can trigger that back again. So I've used the sensory product because take shampoo. Right? You don't, maybe it's on the side, you probably don't look at it much when it's in the shower, right? But every single time you pick it up and you stick it on your head and you start rubbing it in and all of the aromas come off of it, that's reinforcing your brand experience. So when you go into the store and you see Tresemme or a Palmolive or whoever it happens to be, you're having a scenting experience even though there is no brand there. If you can scent in store, even better to trigger that experience. So I'd like to leave you with one bit of maths that I worked out. I'm very proud of it, so I want to share it with you all. So I worked out if you breathe 960 breaths a day, I counted, and there's 16 hours on average you're up every single day. Maybe in Italy it's a bit more. And so that really gives you 15,360 breaths every day. So really that's 15,360 opportunities for your brand that you didn't have before. Thanks very much.